Today I'm with Zoë Clews, who's a hypnotherapist, and she's a mine of information about all the issues that come up in her sessions. And one of the things I wanted to talk to her about was perfectionism. I don't know a lot about it, but I think I might have it to a certain extent. And because I always want to do things, well, perfectly, and I find it very, very hard to do things half-heartedly. And what is that about? And how would you describe perfectionism?
Well, I think it's a really good thing to want to do things well. You know, it's having high standards, having good standards for yourself. The problem comes when we give ourselves a really hard time if we don't do things really well all of the time. And nobody does things really, really well all of the time in all areas of their life. So perfectionism addiction, I think, is quite rife now.
So do you think it's an actual addiction?
Yeah, I do. I think it's a bit of an unconscious addiction. But let's look at what we get fed in social media all the time. So We've got, for example, I always talk about the Kardashians with this, but they are real bastions of perfectionism addiction. I mean, everything's so perfect. Every party they have, their clothes, their bodies. So we see it across all areas. Being a perfect parent, having a perfect outfit, having a perfect self-care routine. And self-care is meant to be something that you do to help yourself feel better, not necessarily something that you constantly display all over social media. The sort of self-care routine has been something that we sort of display, and it's this example of, you know, doing everything perfectly, we're working out perfectly. We think ourselves, we have to be a perfect friend, a perfect partner, we have to look perfect all the time. And it's exhausting, isn't it? And
it is, but what leads to it? What is the impetus? Is it low self-esteem? Mm-hmm. Is it why the need to be perfect?
Well, it comes from the human condition of not feeling good enough. So I see this all the time. So the pressure to be perfect, we think, because, you know, really it's an unconscious belief or an unconscious drive, if you like. If I'm perfect, then I will feel good enough. If I'm perfect, then I will be loved. So one of the... yes.
If I'm perfect, I will be loved.
Yes.
So do you think a perfectionist is someone who thinks to be lovable and to be loved, they have to be perfect?
Yeah, I do. Absolutely. So it's a defense mechanism. So let's take the example of somebody who grew up with a traumatic background.
Right.
Now, so there's many ways of responding to trauma, and trauma isn't just about what happens to you, it's also what doesn't happen to you as well. So for some people it might be some kind of physical abuse, that's big T trauma, or trauma can also be you weren't given the adequate love, mirroring and nurturing that you required as a child, that all children require. So you can then come to the belief, I'm not good enough because of what happened to you or what didn't happen to you. Now that's a horrible belief to be able to tolerate. So then you come up, so your subconscious comes up with, or your conscious, or a mixture of the two, comes up with a solution. Okay, I need to feel good enough. So we look around us and we see what will make me feel good enough. And we might think, if I lose the weight, I will feel good enough. If I get this plastic surgery, I will feel good enough. If I have perfect outfits all the time, I will feel good enough. If I have the perfect wellness routine, if I become a chief executive of Google, then I will feel good enough. But then we're always kicking the proverbial can.
And it's an impossible task. It's an impossible, because there is no such thing as, you know, being perfect is a completely subjective thing.
Yes.
Because being perfect for one person, what you think is perfect, may not be perfect for somebody else. So obviously, just trying to achieve that all the time is
and then maintain it, not just achieve it, but then you've got to maintain it.
It is absolutely impossible. So if one finds oneself sort of constantly just trying to be perfect and achieve perfectionism, what to do?
Well, I think it's always important to, well, there's a few things. One of the most important things we can do is look at the wounding that caused us to have these negative beliefs about ourselves in the first place, which has then driven the obsessive desire to be perfect. We all want to do well, but and that's a great and healthy goal. But it's when we have this unrelenting standards, I must be perfect all the time, or must be perfect all the time in this area, then I've got to maintain it. That's the problem. So the solution... But
even if you look at it, I mean, would you have to do that in, you know, in therapy or hypnotherapy? Would you, I mean, what are the chances of somebody be able to see that themselves and then being able to change how they feel?
Well, it depends. I guess it depends how deep it goes. It's always great to get the support of a therapist or a coach. But if you don't want to do that, likewise, you could have a look and think, okay, what were the messages that I received in childhood through either what was done to me or what was not done to me, or perhaps through a caregiver that had a certain message about themselves. Because some people can have perfectionism addiction if they were criticised heavily. You see what I mean? So they think, oh, I was really criticised all the time. So I think their defence to that is to become as perfect as possible, to feel good enough. So you could do it on your own. You could just be curious with yourself. Okay, what messages did I receive in childhood that were toxic, that were unhelpful, that are causing me to feel uncomfortable in my own skin? Because one of the greatest goals in life is being comfortable in your own skin. That's like true emotional health, I think. And being comfortable in your own skin doesn't mean that you don't have standards, you don't take care of yourself. It just means you have some self-acceptance. You might still want to change some stuff, but you don't beat yourself for not being there already. Do you see what I mean? Beat yourself up. So you can look at it with a therapist or coach, someone trusted. You could even work with it with a friend, if it feels safe enough, and just have a look. Okay, why am I driving myself so crazy in these areas? But just sit with yourself. Self-inquiry is a really powerful tool. What are the messages that I received about being perfect or not being good enough? And then you could look to just bring some awareness to it, because awareness is always the first step to change.
I was going to say, I think awareness. I think, I think people aren't always honest with themselves, and it's sometimes there are issues that they're very blatantly obvious to everybody else, but not to ourselves.
Yeah.
And if you ask yourselves a few questions, or I realized a few years ago, for example, that I did have a lot of fear and hesitancy, but I thought I didn't. I actually thought I'd been, for years going around thinking I was completely fearless. And somebody said to me, does fear ever stop you doing anything? And I went, no. I feel frightened sometimes, but no, it never stops me doing anything, was my immediate answer. But then that question sat with me.
Yeah.
And I couldn't stop thinking about it. And the more I thought about it and I looked at myself, I realized that was totally untrue, and that fear did stop me.
Yeah.
And actually that was about the time when I started the Ageless website.
Oh, wonderful.
And the only reason because I had been thinking of it, but I was too scared.
Yeah.
Because I didn't know, I thought, what am I going to say every week? I won't know what to say or what to write about. And it was the first step I took in acknowledging that I was scared, but doing it anyway.
And that's a great point, because I always say there's no such thing as fearless. There is, courage is not the absence of fear. That's being brain dead, right?
Yeah.
To just walk around with no fear, we'd be doing all sorts of mad stuff, right?
Yeah.
So courage isn't the absence of fear, it's feeling the fear and doing it anyway. That's what courage is. We're going to feel fear.
Well, that was a seminal moment for me. Say that if something makes you scared, you should do it, because we need to challenge ourselves. We can't avoid all risk and fear.
Yeah.
And have we gone off topic
No,
here? I don't know. Was it all connected?
It loops back in, because the thing is, we can. This is a really good point, because we can do this thing of saying, oh, everything's got to be perfect for me to start, so we can do this whole piece on ourselves of things must be perfect. If you only wait until you're ready to do something, you'll never do anything.
Yeah.
We need to sort of set out for journeys. There's a really good saying, Dr. Sheldon Kopp said, I've never set out for a journey for which I felt fully prepared.
Right.
I love that phrase. So it's about giving ourselves the permission to go forward and do things despite it being imperfect. When I became a hypnotherapist, I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel prepared. I was terrified of what everybody thought. I had to go through a wall of shame and fear, and it was so imperfect the way I started. And it's one of the best things I ever did.
Well, and look what you've achieved. You have your own practice, and you have all these other therapists who are working with you and for you, and it's just incredible. So I suppose the message is I think it's good to challenge ourselves and to know that fear is normal, and this is certainly something I have to work on. And I suppose, and coming out of this with perfectionism and fear and all that, is is the self-awareness, because when you become aware of a trait you have or a pattern you have and the reason behind it, and a lot of things can go back to childhood, can't they?
Yeah.
Then once you're aware of it, and acknowledge it. You see, denial is a potent thing that I think happens a lot with people.
Fur coat of denial.
Yeah, but when you acknowledge whatever it is, I think that's a very powerful thing for moving forward.
It is, and acknowledging, you can acknowledge, okay, this happened in the past and that really scared me, and I had that belief about myself, and I can see why I've responded in that way, and I've had this certain defense to it. But is that really true? And is it true anymore? And be compassionate to yourself and go, okay, that was true then, but actually, I'm allowed to go forward imperfectly. Doesn't matter. It's allow yourself to start things imperfectly, and a lot of the time you will learn along the way and you will improve along the way.
Yes, and and evolving all the time, aren't we? So,
yeah, we are, and this is the thing, we've got to allow ourselves to have really imperfect journeys. Life is messy, it's visible, all manner of things will go on. And also the other thing about perfectionism is it's a form of control. We can get really rigid about things. Things got to be perfect this way, and life just doesn't work like that, does it?
It's so easy, especially after the last 2 years.
Yeah.
Just getting into a rut and just wanting to stay home and not risk getting ill or risk doing anything. And I think especially right now, after these very strange couple of years, I think it's very important for people to take risk, to get out there, to get out of their comfort zones, and get on with it. One thing I realized in life, going back to when I started the website and things like that, is this whole world is full of people starting businesses or starting a project or a website or whatever. I don't think anybody knows what they're doing. I mean, that is the conclusion I've come to.
Yeah.
We all think that everybody's got it sussed.
So true.
And then I realised, you know what? I don't think anyone knows any more than I do.
No.
So I may as well do it, and people learn along the way and they acquire, but...
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'll say is this as well, I always just think, you really need self-belief to do stuff. You don't actually. What you just need is the courage to do the thing, and then if you do it for long enough, the self-belief starts to land. I didn't believe when I became a hypnotherapist that I would have this and everything I've built up. I didn't believe it for a second. I just did it anyway, and then after a while, the self-belief came. So you don't, we can, if we wait for self-belief to arrive before we do the thing, you're going to be waiting forever.
Yeah.
Do it anyway.
So, don't waste any time on fear. Don't let that fear hold you back. Don't let perfectionism, because I suppose perfectionism and fear are actually quite closely linked when you think about it.
Hugely,
so,
yes.
hey,
do it anyway. Feel
Do it
free and
anyway.
do it anyway.